Hello. Uh, Good morning. Good morning to everyone over here. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all to the first annual PLT conference. The acronym stands for Psychology, Learning, and Technology. We carefully prepared this event, and I'm looking forward to learn from all your presentations and keynote speakers about the three key themes that characterize this year: self-regulated learning, well-being, and e-learning, of course. The conference promotes the establishment of a community of practice in three sectors, the three sectors covered by the conference, of course, through a multidisciplinary approach. Some data about this conference. We have 21 contributions. We have selected 21 contributions. We have over 50 authors participating in the studies that are presented, and we have contribution from Italy, of course, but also from Turkey, Greece, Spain, Poland, Russia, and India. As I say, this is the first conference named PLT, but we wish to generate a tradition. So we hope it will be an annual conference hosted by our university, and we hope we will have the chance to develop the conference in presence as well as in hybrid blended telematic mode. The conference is organized in 3 days. The first day is organized on e-learning clusters, technology-enhanced learning, and the keynote is offered by Professor Albert Sangra from UOC in Spain, which is one of the leading experts on technology-enhanced learning worldwide. And we are extremely honored to welcome him here today. He's a colleague and a friend, of course, of us. And I hope this presence in this conference is also a chance to establish with him further collaboration with this research group. The second day cluster is dedicated to school psychology and educational psychology. And the keynote is held by Professor Mariana Alessi from the University of Catania. That will be introduced, of course, tomorrow by my colleague. And the third day is developed to developmental psychology and well-being. And the keynote will be offered by Professor Lucia Masson from the University of Padua, which is also the president of the EARLY Association, the European Association of Research on Education and Learning. And it is an extreme honor to have her as our keynote speaker in our conference. The conference aims to report international results on the subject of learning in terms of psychological learning theories, but also in terms of experimentation in the field and design of new technology and new approaches to learning. And I don't want to take more time with my presentation. I just want to say that I'm very proud that we are offering this conference now. Even if with COVID we have so many, problems and issues to solve in our universities, everyone is also very much concerned about the quality of the research that has been developed in the universities during these 2 years of pandemic, and specifically for people working in the educational field and in the technology-enhanced learning field. This period of pandemic has been extremely traumatic, but also rich in terms of data and research. So I think we have a duty to invest all our resources in creating chances or opportunities like this to facilitate the exchange and the collaboration among the researchers and put together the data that could inform innovative and better policies also in terms of our state policies. So thank you all for your presence and participation. And I want to thank the scientific and the organizing committee, and of course the PhD students and the volunteers that gave us the chance to live this scientific experience all together. It's a privilege for all of us to host you online, and as I said, maybe next year we will see each other physically, analogically here in Foggia, sharing ideas, but also sharing some great social evenings. So, looking forward to hear all your contributions, and I declare the conference open for further proceedings. So, Albert, to you.
Thank you very much. Buongiorno a tutti, cari colleghi e colleghe. Io sono molto contento, è veramente un piacere essere qui oggi, anche se online, con tutti voi, e essere invitato a questo prima organizzazione di questa conferenza, seminario sulla Psychology, Learning and Technology. Quindi anche se sono stato chiesto a fare il mio intervento in inglese, volevo anche salutare tutti in italiano e dire che se alla fine ci sono domande che è più comodo per tutti voi farle in italiano, le potete fare in italiano, io posso rispondere anche in italiano, e quelli che vogliono farle in inglese la possono fare in inglese pure. Quindi vado a iniziare. Good morning, dear colleagues. I have just give the greets to all the colleagues in Italian, and now I'm going to follow my intervention in English. Thank you. So let me share the screen. Do you see the presentation now?
Yes, we see the presentation.
Okay, perfect. So I have titled my presentation with this idea of higher education futures, glancing the normal from a different perspective, because I think that because we unfortunately, we cannot say after the pandemic, because the pandemic is still here. But during all this period of time, we're always looking for having a normal situation again. So unfortunately, there is no so normal as we wished. But we're trying to identify how we have learned from this period of pandemic regarding learning and teaching in higher education, and particularly considering that we have said, most of us said, that what we did is to move to online education. Let's see if that is exactly what we did, or a different thing, and how we can face this new normal, considering what we have learned, and moving to a different way to make students learn and teachers teach. So first of all, we could say that learning is changing. Yes, this is not a scoop. So we know that learning is changing since a long time ago. We know that, but because learning is something that is permanently moving to new ways, to new things. So I don't agree on the fact that people say, okay, universities are those places in which nothing changes. Never. I think that the way we teach, the way we learn is changing every single day. But sometimes we don't perceive these small changes, these new approaches, and so on. So learning is permanently changing. And we know that there are some important pillars for the future and almost present of learning. This future of learning was identified in a study by Christine Redeker and other authors in 2011 in a book entitled The Future of Learning, Preparing for Change. Since that moment, they say that there were especially 4 pillars that were very important for the future of learning. So that learning was moving to these elements, like one is flexibility. Flexibility in the sense that people is asking for doing things in different times, at different moments, different places, and adapting what they know they priorly know, and to add new knowledge to the one they have. So this kind of flexibility, going further than the formal curriculum from the institutions, is very important, not only in the way we are providing the learning, but in the content itself of the learning. So one pillar is flexibility. The second pillar is personalization. And yes, everyone says, okay, through technology, we are going to personalize everything. But unfortunately, you know that when technology comes to education, people don't invent a new way to use technology in education. We usually apply what technology has been used in other sectors like commerce or like other kind of enterprises. So in that sense, when we say or we tell about personalization, we are not talking about what Amazon is doing when you are going to buy a book or something like this, that they say, okay, if you buy this book, please buy these other 3, because every single people that bought this book also bought these other 3. So this is not personalization. This is a kind of uniformization of people. So you have to read the same things that others have read before you. So personalization is how to manage the difference, how we can really respond to our students in the way that they really need, how we can adapt what we are providing them, the way we are teaching, the content we are teaching to the needs of these people. So flexibility is a must, but personalization is also a must, because people is asking for much more adaptable learning for them. The fourth element or pillar is interaction. Interaction is a must in the sense that, yes, during the pandemic we have heard that people should interact, that social interaction is very important, that we need to interact. But at the end, most of the learning that we are providing is just reading, is just doing things as itself and not interacting with each other. So any single model we are creating for the future of learning could take into consideration a high level of interaction. And yes, interaction can be done in different ways. So we don't need to be synchronous for having interaction. We can be asynchronous also, and we can be in presence or we can be online. But we need to design the kinds of interaction that will provide a better learning experience to our students too. And the fourth one is collaboration. In the same way, so for instance, some kind of courses that it's just click and read and click and read and so on is not the kind of learning that we can expect for the future. We can expect a learning in which collaborating with others is very important, because you know that learning is a social construct. And social doesn't mean to be all together in the same place. Social means to do things collaboratively, to do things interacting with the others. So flexibility, personalization, interaction, and collaboration are the 4 main pillars of the future of learning. But if I may, I would like to introduce another one that I think is growing and growing increasingly in the last times. That is informalization. So the social networks and the technology that it's embedded in these networks is letting us to relate each other in new and different ways that we used to do. And institutions are not taking advantage of the way that students and other people are learning from the informal relationships. And we should take them into consideration because more and more people are learning from others when they are in informal settings. I'm not saying that universities have to do things informally or have to be in the informal settings too, because we could not formalize the informal, because then it becomes formal and the informal things disappear. What we need to know is what people do in the informal settings in order to provide them with a kind of curriculum, with a kind of way of teaching that could respond and complement to what they also learn out of the institutions. And this is important because some of my colleagues sometimes said we cannot tell the students what things are because they can find them in the internet, in Google. Yes, of course, so we should do a different thing in our classrooms, but we should take into consideration that they can find this information in internet, that they can find this information in their relationships with other people. And then we can take advantage of this informal knowledge they are acquiring in order to make it to play a role in the way we are providing this education to them. The reality, the world is already hybrid since a long time ago. In fact, you can see at the top and left of this slide a frog. A frog is it's an example of hybrid animal that can live in two different environments. But we have a lot of hybrid elements in our life. We can see this car that it's going to be by gas or by electricity. But also we have the power in a hybrid way. We can have this aerial wind power, and we have the sun power too. And then it's absolutely logical that education has to become also hybrid, because we have all the analogic elements, the analog elements that we used to use along our lives, but at the same time we are using technology in order to improve. And that's the point. We are not using technology just to communicate, just to do other things. We have to use technology in order to improve our learning. So considering this, a pandemic arrived. And this pandemic, I like very much to mention the words of the Uruguayan poet Mario Benedetti, that said, when we thought we had all the answers, suddenly all the questions were changed. And I think this is the perception we had at the very beginning of the pandemic. So we were experienced teachers, and suddenly things changed. And our knowledge is not useful anymore. And what to do? And this was the question that most of us ask each other, what to do? Because yes, we know a lot of things, but suddenly in a minute, things change absolutely. So this was what the pandemic challenged us, how to do something again in a different way, how we can recreate our profession, how we can recreate the way we are teaching our students. But as I have said before, learning was changing. Learning is not going to change only because of the pandemic. It's because this is something that is been happening for years, for decades. I used to say that there are 4 catalysts for this metamorphosis of learning. First, that there are a lot of connected networks that enable connected learning. So this is something that is increasing every time. The second catalyst is the growing empowerment of learners. Learners are no longer those people that are waiting for knowing what to do. They take the initiative, they take the advantage, they know that they can learn by themselves, so they are empowered and they have the capacity for learning, and they ask us to help them to increase this capacity. The third point is the overcoming of time and space barriers. Since the 90s, the rise of the internet have led us to overcome these time and space barriers. People use them in different ways, but this is a fact. We can overcome these barriers. And the fourth catalyst is the acceptance of the existence of an unconscious, informal, invisible, and silent learning. This unconscious, informal, invisible, and silent learning is happening out there. So we have to take this into consideration, because also new agents are arriving into the educational arena. And this is important because we cannot stay in the same place. We cannot stay in the same situation. We should also move forward a new setting. In addition, and this is because I have written here the 4+1. In addition, the discontinuity or the intermittence generated by the situation of pandemic have made that this change sped up. Okay, so all this now is much faster than before, not only in real speed, but in our perception of this speed, because we have the need to do it, because it's not just a choice, it's a need, and we are asked to move quickly, immediately, giving an answer, because no one have time to waste. And this is the strong challenge we are facing from the very beginning of the pandemic and still now. We have learned something from the pandemic. I'm afraid we have not learned all the elements yet, but let's comment some provisory lessons from the pandemic. Maybe in different forms, this could happen again, and we have to avoid the interruption of education. Nobody thought that it could be possible. Nobody believed that could be possible that all the universities, all the schools should close their doors and people should be at home. Learning from home was a choice from some few people. Now it's the reality for the majority. We did our best, yes, and thank you very much to all. But some things can be done much better. We have learned that. Some things can be done much better, and we should. Digital growth has resulted in the only feasible solution. So it doesn't matter if you like digital education. It doesn't matter if you like do things online or not. It has been the only feasible solution. So we should learn about it, because it can happen again and would be good, even if we don't like it, to use it in the best way. Because maybe we can learn to do things in a different way too. So maybe it's not so bad. We also have known or remember that the digital divide is still a great barrier. We know that, but this is not something that should stop us to go forward. And we have also learned that remote teaching was not online education, and this is very, very important. This you can see the reference in which the first people that noticed that, Hodge, Moore, Lockheed, Trust, and Bond, said, what is the difference between emergency remote teaching and real online learning? It's a different thing. And this is very important for the value of online education, and I will talk about it later. And finally, we have learned that hybridization of learning is already there. So it's not a future, it's a present in this sense. So let's talk about online education. And I compare this with the tale of the emperor's new clothes. Because what have happened with online education is something similar. I have to accept that online education is still a fuzzy concept. As Zhao mentioned, it's online education and all its variants, such online instruction, online teaching, distance education, distance learning, is a big umbrella that covers a wide array of different practices which vary a great deal in terms of quality. And this is very important. So not everything values the same, okay? So its definition, the definition of online education, depends on everyone's use. People used to say that we are doing online education if what I'm doing can be said that it's online education. I'm not going to change what I do, but I'm going to label that I'm presenting to the others what I'm doing. So sometimes it's traditional distance education using new technologies. Sometimes it's e-learning, but with a strong technology-based approach, that it's highlighting the E and not the learning. Sometimes it implies synchronous and asynchronous solutions, or maybe not. Sometimes it can be understood as a simple replica of classroom lectures, usually based on video lectures, or as a PDF delivery model, or as an accessible repository of documents. All this leads to a considerable confusion for those people who are really interested in it for the first time. So they arrive and said, okay, but what is online education? And this confusion don't help to use it in a good way. So what we can say that is quality education, quality online education? We can say that when it is planned, and we couldn't plan the one we did, when it is organized and everything have a particular role and the role is defined and we know that role, it is demanding. So it's not just do that because we cannot do anything else. And it is responsible. So we know that we are trying to do this in the best way, in the best possible way. So it means that if it is planned, organized, demanding, and responsible, it means that it is strategic. And this is the most important thing, not to use online education as a response to what is happening, but as a strategic action that we consider that could be interesting also in the future. So we have to have a mission and a vision, particularly a vision on what is the role of online education in the institutions. Most of the institutions now have used online education without having any strategy for that. So if we have this strategic approach of online education, it will allow flexibility, personalization, interaction, and collaboration. Yes, the 4 pillars for the future of learning that we have identified at the very beginning. And then it will become sustainable, accessible, and innovative. An innovation is not an occurrence of someone to do something in a different way. An innovation has to be tested, has to demonstrate that the results are much better than the previous ones. And we need to develop online education or e-learning models that has to be sustainable, because we should repeat them several times, and accessible, because we need to know if they are working or they are not. Here we can say 2 pictures in which one, we can identify that what Tony Bates and myself, we call the top triangle or the top model. Top because of technology, pedagogy, and organization, because they are the 3 elements of this triangle that are basic in order to develop a quality online education. It's not only about technology. It's not only even about pedagogy. It's also about organization, a good organization for using the best technology, considering the pedagogical approach we would like to provide to our students. And then if we do that, we can mobilize learning. Mobilize learning means that we can put the student in the very center of our educational model. Yes, I know that all we are putting the student in the very center of our models. This is something that we have finally overcome because because at the end of the 19th, for instance, there were very few people saying that the student should be at the very center of all the educational activity. So we put here the student, but we put here also the student activity in the very middle, because we are providing a model that should be activity-based, that should provide participation and engagement of the student, and that should provide also continuous assessment in order to make the student aware about his or her progress. And in order to support the student in this situation, we should provide a group of teachers. Notice that I'm not talking about one teacher, but a group of teachers, because more and more teaching will be something to be done in group. So co-teaching is a buzzword for the very next future. This group of teachers have to provide the student with support, guidance, and interaction. The design of interaction and the design in online courses is absolutely central. We also are providing him or her learning resources, access to content in multiple formats, sometimes because we decide doing it in different formats, sometimes because we would like to provide it in all the accessible forms because of the niche of our students, and with diversified technology. Don't do things in only one technology, because you know that technology is always getting older and older, and we need to change. So using diverse technology will prepare our students in order to work with the technology in different ways. And finally, and very important, to provide the student also a networked community. Here we can find collaboration between peers, and we can provide teamwork, and we will create knowledge building activities. And at the end, they will have a sense of group that is very, very important in these online settings. When we say that emotional things are important when we are all online, it's true, but then we need to develop some elements in the environment of online learning. It's not only about providing content, it's creating real vital settings, living settings in which people feel that they belong to a group, and this group is a community that they would like to learn, but at the same time they take care for the others. So we are moving to hybrid models, and because as I've said, the world is hybrid. So it's true, most of the face-to-face universities that now found that during the pandemic should move to online education, they said, well, but we would like to come back to the old things. But at the end, they said, well, we can do hybrid things because hybrid is much better than online. Well, I'm not sure about that. Hybrid is much better for people that can go to the university. Sure. Hybrid is not so better for people that would like the 100% flexibility. So it's not about what is best or what is the worst or what is better or not. It's about if we would like to develop a hybrid model, because our institution is a face-to-face institution that would like to integrate some learning from the pandemic. And some learning is that maybe we can move to hybrid models of learning. I also believe that the university has to keep being in presence. Sure. But it's also true that some universities have experienced new approaches for teaching and learning, and some, not all of them, but some have succeeded. And it's good to take advantage of that. So at the end, even if we come really back to the desired normal, we'll be back to fully in presence models. I'm not sure about that, because my internal mind would say no, I think no. But sometimes I think that people is much more resistant than we really expect. So what does moving to hybrid models in higher education mean? The first thing is that to understand what is a hybrid or blended model. Remember, the hybrid and blended is the same. If you look at the dictionary, the Oxford or Cambridge dictionary, you could see that hybrid and blended are the same. So it's a trick that you are using a word or another in order to provide different concepts. That's not true. So the thing is that when you identify a hybrid or blended, it means not that you are using two elements at the same time. So hybrid is a model that allows swapping in presence and or two online models. Swapping, not doing them at the same time. So this kind of models in which you have several students in your classroom physically and some students online at the same time, synchronously, this is not hybrid or blended. This is face-to-face. Considering that the kind of learning that the online students will receive will be of poorer quality than the ones that are in the classroom, because you cannot do two things at the same time. You are talking to your students there, and in addition to the other ones. It's very difficult to consider that both are the same. A clear example is a car. You can use a car with gas, or you can use the car with electricity. But you cannot use the car with both at the same time. You will explode. So it doesn't work. Okay? So you can change, you can swap from gas to electricity, from electricity to gas. You can swap from face-to-face to online, or swap from online to face-to-face. And this change and this swap from one to the other is the key element in order to have a very good quality hybrid model. So the key is to get a fluid, smooth transition between in-presence moments and online moments, giving a good nature to the online moments. It's not an addition. It's not something else. Face-to-face moments and online moments have the same value. And this will be the best hybrid models. If we get this fluid, smooth transition, we can get that the change will not be traumatic, but natural, assumed, known. One of the biggest problems we have faced during the pandemic is that people didn't know what to do. So that they were afraid about what is going to happen, because people fears the unknown. And this is very important. If you are planning that and you plan both the face-to-face and the online, and people know that, the change, the transition won't be traumatic, won't be hard. They will accept that because it will be natural. It will be easier to move. So in order to give this, to do this smooth transition, I identify some conditions. These conditions for the smooth transition in unexpected or maybe not unexpected times, okay? First of all, is to develop a hybrid model designed from a different look. We should look at the teaching in a different way than we look at it until now. When we are talking about hybrid, we always are talking it or looking at it from the face-to-face models. Let's do something different. Let's look at it from a distance teaching course. Let's design a distance online teaching course and then introduce face-to-face elements in order to make it blended or hybrid. The concept is completely different, because usually when we come from the face-to-face to introduce some elements online to be blended, the course still is face-to-face, because it's our experience, because it's what we know, it's what we feel sure about. So we need to lose this place in which we are very comfortable and go to the other side, maybe to the dark side, and look at it from the online perspective. You will see how you could identify much more opportunities for teaching and learning when you are in the online side. And then you will be able to design your hybrid model in a completely different way. The second thing is that you should identify the moments, the face-to-face moments and the online moments, and design all them in both ways. So if there is an unexpected situation in which you should change, you don't need to start again. You just switch from the face-to-face to the online, or from the online to the face-to-face. The second condition is the dissociation of time. We always think time in a very linear conception, and the nature of time is quite different. And there are different authors that have worked on it, but the most important thing is to understand that there is a time for learning and there is a time for teaching. And you don't need to put always all of them together at the same time. So in this sense, asynchronicity could be a very good ally in order to develop hybrid models, because you are providing more flexibility to the students and to yourself, because you are identifying different ways to do things that are not always at the same time in the same place. During this pandemic, we have seen that an 80% of the experiences have been to translate into a screen what we do into a classroom. And this is because we are thinking that we cannot do things in a different way, and we can. Absolutely, we can. So thinking on time, playing with time in different ways could provide you a number of different possibilities to design your courses in a different way. The third element is the autonomy and self-regulation of students. We should make them grow. And we should make them grow because we should retrieve the idea of the job of learning. Our students have to understand that learning is also a job. They can learn how to learn, and to develop this particular skill on learning to learn, it will be very important in order to make them grow their autonomy. In fact, when we analyze how this pandemic has affected from K-12 school education to university, we can see that our students could be much more autonomous than they are. It doesn't mean that they should be alone. Absolutely not. It doesn't mean that in all levels of education, the autonomy has to be the same. Absolutely not. But we can grow, make the autonomy of the students grow at every single level of education. And this is something that can be done. And then the transition from face-to-face to online moments will be much, much softer. Particularly because we need to make our students learn how to manage online moments when they are physically in the classroom. And this will be much more clear. Finally, the fourth element is to have a formative, continuous, and diversified assessment. A lot of people have had a lot of troubles with assessment in this situation of pandemic. The major concern was how to assess my students. when my major concern was how to make them to learn. But anyway, the thing was that what we need is to work with different environments for assessment. So first, it has to be formative, of course. It has to be continuous, not at the very end, and it has to be diversified. So in different contexts, face to face, but also online. So it will be useful in order to when we need to move from one context to another one, and at the same time using different kinds of methodologies for assessment, and then they get prepared in order to identify different ways to be assessed at the same time, and finally to make different actors to play a role in assessment. So we can go from self-assessment in some cases to peer assessment between other students, and what we call the hetero assessment, because it's what the teacher assess to. So combining these different kinds of assessment at different moments of the process of learning could help us to develop a hybrid model in which everything makes sense. And this is very important too. So my closing remarks are first of all, a warning. Please do not replicate in presence classroom teaching in an online environment. So you know that the copy is always worse than the original. You can see these pictures, and even if there was an attempt to do the same, the result, you know, that is not exactly the same, even worse. So please, given different contexts, a different combination of strategies is needed. So let's do things in a different way. Don't replicate our classroom, our lectures through a screen, and that's all. Let's go to develop and design a good quality online model, or a good hybrid model. Because at the end, I'm afraid about how much we have learned from the pandemic situation. And my concern is that if we are going to apply the pendulum law, in which we are arriving to the other side, and then we will come back to the past. I'm afraid this is happening. Please don't let this situation happen, in the sense that let's learn about what have happened in the pandemic, and let's introduce elements that will provide a new approach to our teaching and our students' learning. In fact, things are changing, as I said at the very beginning, and people is more and more developing what we call their learning ecologies. The learning ecologies are the set of learning opportunities that people can activate in their particular environment, but they have also an analog environment and a digital environment. So we can also provide and strengthen the digital learning ecologies of our students. And these learning ecologies, because every time people make decisions by their own, and every time, you remember that I said that they make decisions leading to informal learning too. So we should take into consideration that this is the way that people are learning now. And every single institution should take it into consideration, because they need to know what has to be the role of the institutions in the very next future, in which people will make decisions on what to learn, how to learn it, and where to learn it. So developing the awareness of the students in their own learning ecologies, and providing them support for these self-directed learning activities they develop, will probably result in increasing the learning opportunities of our students and of the people in the society in general. Finally, only having a mention on during this period of time, in my research group, we have provided a number of activities and support materials and resources in order to help people, particularly teachers at any level of the educational system, to develop solutions in order to move online or hybrid models. So we made an infography, we made a series of webinars, all them in this case in Spain. We have some of them also in English. And we also published a book in Spanish, in Catalan, and in next month it will be also in English. If some of you can read in Spanish, you can download it for free. And we will be very pleased if it can be useful for you. If you don't read Spanish, just wait for some weeks and you will have it in English too. Here they are the references I have mentioned in this presentation, and that's all. Grazie mille a tutti, and I will be more than glad to answer all the questions that you may have at this moment.
Thank you, Professor Sangra. I'm Raffaele Di Fuccio, and I will collect questions in the YouTube page. Your presentation was brilliant. Thank you for this presentation. It gives very high level to this conference. Your speech was inspiring because you promoted what we are seeing in this period. We are experiencing in this period. Also for you now, it is like to speak like in front of a wall, because for we as teacher in this moment it's like this. Also, if there are a lot of people in YouTube, but we are in front of our environment, behind our screen. So it's not easy, but your proposal was great. I appreciate very much the analogy, the metaphor with the water, because water is like a transition between liquid to gas, and perhaps the teacher should tune the temperature to balance this and to find a good path in the land to in a certain way to give water to the student and to grow up something from the ground. However, I have a question. You spoke about the flexibility. You spoke about the new role of the education, the hybrid. I strongly believe in hybrid, in phygital, the bridge between two sides, the physical and digital. But do you think that the artificial intelligence can be a factor in this environment in order to create more community, more flexibility? Do you think can be the real road, or you think that the opportunity that will be the real change, the real effect on education would be another?
There is no doubt that artificial intelligence can help us, sure, and it will have an important impact on education. The problem I see is twofold. First, that artificial intelligence is not still in a level in which we can use it for the sake of what we need, because it's still under development. And at this moment, the maximum level that in artificial intelligence can get is the level that the programmers have when they are programming everything. Okay, so even if I know that the main aim is to get the systems to think further than the knowledge of who are programming them, this is not happening now, because a good example is when you have a look to an algorithm. algorithms are ideological. So it means that the ideas, I'm not talking politically at this level, I mean the ideas of the people who are programming the algorithms are in the algorithm. So at the end, it means that these algorithms are going to shape the behavior of people considering who have defined them. And this is quite dangerous. Okay, so this is not the kind of artificial intelligence I'm expecting to have. I'm expecting to have something that can be very supportive, but that at the end, every single people is the one that will make a choice. Okay, so this is a point. Obviously, probably in the very next years, we will see advancements in which we can say, okay, these have been solved, and this is a new step, and so on, for sure. And I'm not a specialist of that, so I cannot talk about particularly on the inside of that. The other thing is the two elements. I said two elements. The second element is that usually we don't take into consideration teachers when we are talking about the future of education. Okay, and I think that this is a very big mistake. Okay, so okay, artificial intelligence will solve that for us. Okay, what about the teachers? Where are the teachers that are now working with artificial intelligence in order to use it as an element for teaching? No, this is coming only from engineers. Okay, engineers that are teachers. Sorry, it's not that. It's not that profile which I'm talking about. Okay, with all the respect for them, of course, but it's not about that. What about a teacher on nutrition or humanities or literature? What about that? How they are embedded in artificial intelligence in order to use it for better. Okay, so this is the other problem. It's something that is coming from outside to the teaching and learning process, and I think that this is a mistake. No one would dare to make something in the health system without taking into consideration doctors. Okay, so it's the same in our environment, in the educational environment. And I am not saying that it means that we should not move from one we are. No, we should move, but we should move all together, understanding why we are moving and where we are moving to. Okay, this is my position at this time.
Thank you. It's very inspiring. The role of the human capital, in a certain sense, user-centered learning environments, in a certain sense. Well, there is a question from the audience. Is Maria Teresa Bucci that asks, which kinds of solutions would you propose to make the students keep the attention in an online lesson?
Well, probably I my answer maybe won't satisfy you, Maria Teresa. If you are thinking on the fact that what is the solution to keep the students' attention in a screen, so in a speech through the screen, my answer would be, okay, don't use the screen. My answer would be, let's design the courses in a different way. We don't need to be in front of the screen at every time. So let's do that. And when we meet in a front of the screen, then we have to do something particular, something that we have prepared before. And every single student have to have a role. So this meeting with less people is a meeting in which everyone have their role and they are active. That way, it will be difficult even for them not to be not to pay attention, because they need to interact at that moment. It's completely different if you are going to give a lecture and you are asking them to pay attention, because this situation, I have to say something very important too. When you are in the classroom and you are giving a lecture, most of them are not paying attention. But it doesn't matter for you, because they are there. And some people consider that if they are there, they will learn. That's not true at all. But we think on that. Even me, when I teach face to face, when we have them in front of the screen, if we don't see, as Rafael said, that we are speaking in front of a wall, then we perceive this, they are not paying attention much more than when they are physically there. But then my proposal is, let's do things differently. Don't give lectures through the screen. Let them work in different ways, and let's meet in an online meeting when we have to do something all together and everyone have a role, and we can explain how to solve the problem. Then they will need to pay attention, because you are going them the elements to solve the problem they have. So it's to make in Italian capovoltare, no? Putting it capovolto, no? Then do that. Let's design our courses in a different way. This has been the mistake we have made. And I can understand and be very, 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 very sensitive to that, because we didn't expect this situation and we should give an answer very immediately and so on. But this is what we did not, we did that. We have to redesign our courses in the way that they have to be blended or hybrid, or they have to be fully online. And redesign them doesn't mean just to give the same lectures through a screen, because yes, they don't pay attention because they don't like this way, and it's easy for them to do something else at that moment, because even you cannot probably obligate them to be with the screen, with the camera on. Okay, some universities cannot ask the students that. I don't know why, because I don't think this is something very personal. So because it's something personal, you see them in the classroom, so you can see them also with a diffuse background without looking at the rear. So I don't know why, but anyway, I'm not discussing that. So this is my proposal. Do things differently. Redesign your courses. Take into consideration how you can work asynchronously too. And then use the video conferencing just in order with clear aims, clear goals. We are going to meet 25 minutes to do that, and then all of them will work.
Thank you, Professor Sangra. Thank you for this. At the moment, there is another question from Francesca Finestrone. How do you see the blended education in the primary school?
Mm-hmm. Very good question, Francesca. It's difficult, Vero. The fact is that a lot of people prior to the pandemic said we cannot use online education in primary school. It's impossible. And they had to do it. So let's prepare ourselves in order to study and analyze how we can use not only technology, but a part of online education in a classroom with younger students. It is not easy. I have to accept, obviously, that even the younger the students are, the more difficult organizing activities online is. Okay, but for instance, I've seen different activities in kindergarten schools here in Barcelona during the pandemic, and they connected and they play and they develop elements and so on. So in a primary school, fully online is very difficult. I have to say that in countries like Canada or Australia and New Zealand, they are virtual primary schools. So it works, but it works in under some conditions, of course. So in this case, a blended primary school should take into consideration that social relationship face to face is very important. So attending the classroom is important, but how to manage the time that they can have at home, it's also important. I don't know now currently how in Italy this situation is, but here in Spain there is a big discussion about if students have to have homework at home or not, for instance, okay? Because they have homework. Why don't work homework as a part of the classroom in an online environment? Why not this idea of co-teaching could help the students during the part of the day that they are working at home with a particular goal or aim, and they have a teacher supporting him or her? So some people say students cannot go, primary students cannot go at home to work because the parents, not all the parents have the same social cultural level in order to help them. I don't think the parents have to help the students. The students have to be helped by the teachers. So I cannot ask the parents to know the same as we are learning, we are teaching at the school. But we can have some online teachers that are supporting the students when they are at home. And we can say, okay, there is 1 hour at home that you can work preparing the lesson for the next day, or you have to read a tale, you have to read a part of the book, you have to look and listen to someone talking in a video, or like something like this. So mixing elements and supporting them, because this is the most important thing. At home, we cannot provide neither students in primary school, neither at the university, because I don't think it's the best way, independent learning. This is a different thing. If we are teaching them, we have to support them. So even if they are at home, we need to develop systems in order to support them. And this could be good. So we have a teacher in the classroom, and we have a teacher that is attending several students, a group of students, when they are online. And this can be manageable, okay? So this could be a way in order to define that. And even I have to say that blended, in the idea of dissociating the time I have said, blended could be also blended in time. So even at school, we can have synchronous and asynchronous activities. So sometimes they have to go all together, and sometimes they can have time in the classroom to work for different elements in the classroom or in the school, depending on the building, depending on the environment, depending on the openness of the school, because I think that also spaces have to be redesigned, considering the future of schools too. Because probably if we consider they have to create much more social relationships, schools have to be designed in a different way, and maybe different places in order to work, being at school, to have the support of a teacher when you need it, and so on. So I think there are a lot of things to be done in a different way. But I know that it's much more comfortable to repeat the things that we know that they work. But I think that we should dare to do things in a different way.
Thank you. Thank you, Francesco Finestrani, for the question. Thank you, the Professor Sangra, for this reply. I add that University of Foggia is perfectly online with the Professor Sangra that spoke about synchronous and asynchronous. Now we have a project, an European project called Blue Arrow. The name came from La Freccia Azzurra, written by Gianni Rodari. And the idea is to create a learning environment that connects pupils in class and at home, creating digital stories by using real object, by using the tangible user interface. The object became a smart object and speak something that is possible to connect with a voice, with a video, and pupils in the classroom and pupils at home can work together and have the same story and live the story asynchronous or synchronously in the same. And this is something that is started by 6 months. We're trying to create this environment, but it's in line with the guidelines or the roadmap that Professor Sangra gives in the speech and this reply. So thank you for this. There are no other questions, but we are in perfect time to start the next session that is called the new intersection between psychology, learning, and technology. And Professor Sangra will be the chair and will introduce the paper. And I give the floor to the Professor Sangra.
Thank you very much. So I would like then to greet all of the participants and the people that are going to participate in this new session. I'm going to chair it, just giving the floor to my colleagues and listen to them very, very carefully. And then my proposal is to have 15 minutes each, and then 5 minutes for questions if there are some questions from the public. Just one thing is that how questions can come, because probably questions are going to you, Raffaele.
Yeah. I will collect the questions through YouTube. If the attendees want to do questions, please type a question on YouTube. I will report this to the Professor Sandra.
Perfect. So the title of the session is called New Intersections Between Psychology, Learning, and Technology. So we are in the very core of this conference, this seminar, and the first intervention will come from Spain. Buenos días. Is going to be presented by Alejandro Criado Martín and Ivana Delgado Ferrer, although the paper is also written by Eva Maria Lanagran Valero, Carmen Alvarez Dominguez, and Eva Maria Nestares. So Alejandro and Ivana are going to present a paper called Proposal for Intervention on Complicated Grief in Relative of Patients with COVID-19. They are coming from the Universidad Internacional de La Rioja, International La Rioja University, and UNED, the National Spanish Distance Teaching University. So in a nutshell, the paper presents a proposal of a scheme for flexible online intervention protocol of narrative and cognitive behavioral therapy in order to reduce complicated grief and psychological distress. So Alejandro and Ivana, the floor is yours. Adelante.
Thank you. I take the floor for 1 minute because this morning Alejandro Criado Martin sent the presentation, I will take the presentation. There is the real voice of Criado that excuse for impossibility to be here, but I hope that I'm sure that his speech will be clear as well. I present the presentation. There is the video of Criado. Please give me a voice if, in the case my audio is not clear or there is something technical problems in a certain way. So I give the
Good morning, my name is Alejandro Criado, and I am a member of the group that has carried out the proposal intervention on a complicated grief in relatives of patients with COVID-19. First, I would like to thank you for allowing us to be here at this Congress, which is interesting as it is necessary, and I apologize on behalf of our team for not being able to be here today. And well, finally, I hope you like our proposal. Well, death throughout history has had a different definition depending on how this fact is conceived on a philosophical level. Death as a cessation of life has been characterized in many of its conception. As Garcia Jimenez pointed in 2009, as a step towards the afterlife. This afterlife sometimes is conceived more religious, but always is spiritual. And this is conceived in this way since the Paleolithic. Along the history, funeral rites have shown their usefulness as a symbolic act, both to give death a continuing meaning. Is not only the end, but is the beginning of another stage, and to provide support to those who survive. In this way, funeral rites are understood as a spiritual act at in the same time as a social act. Well, in spite of death of relatives, an event that all individuals experience throughout our lives. There are times when death is even more present, such as wars, natural disasters, and pandemics. There are cases of archaeological population that have disappeared because of pandemic or a disaster, natural disaster, and have left almost no trace. Now, however, we're in an era of complete globalization, and we're all connected. In this sense, the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in daily exposure to death, both directly and by media, mass media, and scientific media. For example, or specifically in Spain, during the first wave, according to data of Ministry of Health, more than 20,000 deaths were recorded, reaching its maximum peak on April 2, 2020 with more than 900 people, and the second wave on the 3rd, on the 4th, and the 5th, they took more than 19,000 and 5,000 and 7,000, so a lot of people has diseased. But there's also in other neighboring countries such as Italy and United Kingdom, and that were also repeated in the rest of the world. To prevent further infections, urgent measures were taken as well. Mainly the total restriction of the mobility of citizens through confinement, teleworking, and education was chosen, and citizens could only leave their homes under very special conditions, like somebody to about 2 tomatoes, for example. However, while a large part of the population was confined to their homes, many of their relatives were hospitalized in intensive care units, and unfortunately, a large part of them died in strict loneliness. During the confinement, one of the events that were suspended were the funeral acts. The corpses were accumulated in reconditioned spaces, like as a Palacio de Hielo in Madrid, and we were still exposed to those images without being able to say goodbye to our relatives. Therefore, we consider that it is essential to work in these cases as the situation due to COVID-19 continues to be critical with the new Omicron variant. The best way to do this is through an online program. In addition, the online intervention are the best option to guarantee that the people who needs help after suffering the loss of a loved one, they can receive such help. For the intervention, there are various interventions for complicated grief, but to our knowledge, no one have been developed in the context of pandemic and in the restriction of participants in funerals. Among the interventions traditionally used in complicated grief, many of them tend to use narrative techniques based on the Baker and Beale paradigm, which emphasize the writing expression of thoughts and feelings that the survivor has about the event to produce an improvement in their own condition of health. One of the best known programs based on this paradigm is the Interrapy program, an online program lasting 10 sessions for patients with a post-traumatic stress disorder, where in each session the patient writes for 45 minutes about the event. The program is structured in 3 phases: imagination exposure, cognitive reappraisal, and integration and restoration. This program was adapted for a complicated grief cases by Lange and van der Houwen et al. Also adapted it to include cognitive behavioral techniques. In this project, we adapted the program by Lange and van der Houwen to work with complicated grief, who couldn't participate or perform the funeral. And the hypotheses that we propose for this intervention are the following. One, a significant reduction in the symptoms of complicated grief is expected as assessed by the complicated grief inventory. A significant reduction in psychological stress is expected as assessed by the depression, anxiety, and stresses scales, DSS-21. And third, if significant reductions were observed in the symptoms of complicated grief and psychological distress, this reduction will be maintained at the follow-up measure 1 month after the end of the interventions. Well, the participants for these interventions will be over 18 years of age, a total score of more than 25 from the complicated grief inventory, have lost a loved one during the pandemic and due to the confinement, and they have been unable to attend the funeral. They're taking psychopharmacological treatment. It has been at least 6 months since death of the person. They can read and write in Spanish, has a computer or smartphone can give an informed consent. They are not already under psychological treatment, have not neurocognitive problem, and have not previously undergone a psychological or psychopharmacological treatment for another complicated development. The instruments would be demographic questionnaire, complicated grief inventory, depression, anxiety, and stress scales, DSS-21, and satisfaction with the program, difficulty in handling the application, perceived of usefulness of the application, difficulty in integrating the program into the daily life. A qualitative item will be also added that the participants can record the difficulties that they may have had and the strengths they find in the program. The recruitment will be carried out, creating an advertisement looking for people interested in participating in this project and who meets the criteria. A form will be created in Google Forms, ensuring the confidentiality of the data, where the personal and contact information of each interested party will be requested. Next, we want to make a snowball method and brochures, distributed mainly in Madrid and Barcelona, will be also developed with the idea of the research requisition for the collaboration of health center and public administration. That it's very important, because without that, nothing. The procedure: the candidates will be screened by selecting those who meet all the proposed criteria. All the participants will go through the initial evaluation, pre-measures, and subjects will be randomly assigned to each group, and psychologists, clinical specialists in complicated grief, and randomization will be generating random numbers by computer with the collaboration of an external assistant to the project. Triple blind trial with allocation consult from participants, investigators, and analysts waiting the control group. Evaluation by phone call, video call, or email, and post-intervention immediately at the end of the intervention, and follow-up measures 1 month later after the intervention. Our program consists of a 7-week intervention structured in 3 phases, which are described in our work. This flowchart can show it: exhibition, cognitive restructuring, reintegration, and all narratives will receive feedback from the therapists. For example, they expand further at some point in the narrative. Our program data will be analyzed using the intention to treat principle and the multiple imputation method, using a multi-group latent growth curve model, a more modern and usable technique than mixed ANOVA to observe possible significant difference. And the implication and conclusions: this is a protocol that has not yet been carried out. No results are available. However, significant reduction in both in the IDC score and secondary measures obtained through the DSS-21 scores are expected. So if our predictions are fulfilled, this work could be a good starting point for further evidence of efficacy of narrative and cognitive behavioral therapy based intervention to manage complicated grief, especially in the face of critical events such as those that occurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. And now we are living in a time where receiving a psychological help stands for a long waiting sometimes at least. So digital technologies are great to offer immediate and accessible intervention to almost anyone. Digital devices are becoming more and more accessible. They allow us to communicate thousands of miles like today. And there are multiple online interventions for various psychological problems that have proven their effectiveness. Therefore, it's essential to develop a program aimed at improving people's psychological well-being. And digital technology allows us to do so in more open and accessible way, something especially important over the last few years. And to finish, if you have any doubts about the proposed intervention or questions, please do not hesitate to contact the email that you have in front of you. Addresses provided in this slide. And thank you very much for your attention, and on behalf of our group, thank you very much for your attention, and we hope you enjoy the Congress and the presentation of its participants. Have a nice day and nice meeting, and grazie mille a tutti per essere qua e per la vostra attenzione. Ciao.
Thank you very much, Alejandro. Raffaele, I don't know how we can manage now if there are questions. I don't know.
Yeah, I propose that if anyone have questions, I will send to Alejandro because he's not here and he can't reply to us. And I suggest you move to the second paper.
Perfect. Thank you very much. The second paper is called Storytelling Practice in Sectors of Education, Psychology, Communication, and Marketing, a narrative review. And it is going to be presented by three people: Marco Di Furia from the University of Foggia, Nicholas Nicol from the University of Nicosia in Cyprus, Ozgur Yasar Alkiyar from Hacettepe University from Turkey, and Martina Rossi from the University of Foggia too. So it seems that the one that is going to make the presentation is Marco Di Furia. So this presentation is about a review on storytelling practices in different sectors, from education to psychology, from communication to marketing. And from its selection criteria, the paper analyzes the outcomes of 25 papers in terms of practices and models. So Marco, if you are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you for this introduction. Okay, so good morning, everyone. My name is Marco Di Furia, and I am a young researcher here in Foggia, the University of Foggia. I work in the Learning Sciences Hub. And in the first place, I want to thank you also, Professor Limone, and the University of Foggia for this great opportunity. And of course, I wholeheartedly greet my colleagues who have helped me a lot with this great work. So I'm gonna share the presentation. So yes, this is a narrative review about storytelling practice in different sectors of applications, such as, for example, education, psychology, communication, and marketing. So we know that storytelling is a powerful instrument of human being, we could say. The ability to tell a story is very ancient. It started with our ancestors, and it has always brought something good, we can say, and it has always been very powerful, very strong in the communication field, of course. But today we're gonna explore other applications, other involvements of storytelling, and of course, considering that storytelling is transforming itself today, because it is converted to digital forms, which are, the contemporary forms of communication and expression of ourselves. So we started asking ourselves what digital means. What does digital mean today? So we can say that digital means multimodal, of course, in the first place, to the extent that digital stories combine different digital aspects, such as video or social media aspects, such as, for example, the brief texts like tweets or images, audios, and other elements taken from the social media field, such as, for example, I don't know, emojis that are synthetic ways to express our feelings and moods. But digital also means versatile, because digital is something fluid, is something very flexible, and it could be adapted to the field in which it is applied, such as, for example, healthcare, the expression of identity, and also marketing and strategic communication. So tourism field or trade field. In such fields, in such categories, and in many others, our objective could be, for example, find the best practices in emphasizing the relevance, the importance of digital storytelling practices in general. So, for example, we have found, together with Stargard and others, that DST, digital storytelling, has a great impact on health and well-being in the elderly. And we could also consider the statement of by WHO, the World Health Organization, that declare that an important brick of human health, individual health, is, of course, well-being. So DST, it could be very useful in guarantee or promote the psychophysical well-being in patients, for example. Digital storytelling, we could say, together with Meadows, is not just a story, a multimedia story told from the art, but we could say it is a revolution. And in fact, digital storytelling through social media platforms nowadays as a great impact on people. And we can take as an example the spreading of social movements, important social movements, which went viral and global, such as, for example, Black Lives Matter movement or Me Too movement, or we could say we could consider also social movements which was born to spread the message that we should care for our planet. I'm thinking about Fridays for the Future, founded by Greta Thunberg. And again, we can say that digital storytelling practices could be very useful, especially in the field of education. There are many studies about the benefits deriving from digital storytelling. Previously, we have learned about, for example, the importance to find solutions, psychological solutions in favor of people who are suffering for grief deriving from the pandemic. There are many studies that show how DST practices could be effective and productive in supporting grief, depression, and other psychological conditions that could be helped through DST practices. For example, there are studies about the using of DST in the treatment of depression in young athletes with special educational needs, or in increasing confidence and awareness in patients undergoing hematopoietic cell transplantation. So maybe I've introduced too much. We're going to underline our objective, to express the objective of this narrative review. So our purpose was to evaluate the available studies of digital storytelling, focusing on practices and models. And in order to demonstrate and show and highlight how DST could be effective and flexible and could be adaptive in diverse fields of application. So these are the main questions we posed. And of course, we have used especially instruments and tools which allowed us to realize a narrow selection of meaningful and relevant studies. Our sources was many. For example, we can quote some of them, such as Google Scholar or PubMed or Cochrane Library, to make some examples. And of course, we have excluded all the gray literature and news articles and legal reports, which basically weren't relevant for our to reach in reaching our purpose. And of course, we have selected the articles using using some criteria and parameters. So we selected article about education, psychology, communication, marketing, because these are the fields of our interest for this specific study. We reached over 300,000 results, and in the end, we selected a strictly selected a small number of 25 remaining articles, and we set up a table of contents. You could say here with 5 different columns in which we can find author, place of studies, the field, and of course practices and models, which are our main purpose to evaluate, to highlight. So I'm about to conclude. We obtained a number of 25 empirical studies that could be very interesting for those scholars who are interested in exploring DST application within family interactions, or the role of DST in healthcare and professional formation and education of, for example, supporting teacher or health personnel. And of course, all the results we have analyzed and the big numbers demonstrate that DST practices and models are a big interest of the research community. And we have, of course, great perspectives for the future, and with the aim to find the best results, obtain the best results from DST practices, and this is what we really hope. So thank you for the attention. That's all, and have a nice day.
Grazie Marco per la tua presentazione. Thank you very much. So Raffaele, we'll see if there are any questions for Marco.
Yeah, at the moment on YouTube, there are only compliments from Nicolas Nicoli. Great presentation, Marco. But at the moment, there are no questions for Marco. Thank you.
Okay, so if there are no questions, Marco, maybe I can ask you a question, because I was curious about that. So when you are thinking on a storytelling for in the digital environments, at the very beginning, you have identified that you can use video and other means like social networks and so on. But have you, any of you, analyzed what is the role of text in this storytelling? What I mean is that traditional or analog storytelling is based on text, okay? So digital storytelling seems to be more based on images. But which is the role of text in this new digital storytelling?
Thank you for the question. That's very interesting, because I think that the role of text is still important. Also, I think that maybe many people are thinking that texts will be not very important in future, but I find texts the main and the main way to express ourselves, because when we, for example, when we have an idea, when I come up with an idea, the first thing I do is write it down. So, and I think this is an experience that could be shared by everyone, and everyone could understand that still texts are important to make our ideas and our thoughts real on paper. And this paper also can be not made by paper, but in the form of a screen, of course. But I think that images and audios and other elements of communication are important tools to enrich our texts. They can be substitutes of texts, but also something that could be relevant and useful for enriching our texts. And also, I think that today we need brief text with a strong meaning. So this is the new form of for textualizing an idea, I think, to make our thoughts brief and synthetic, to spread our message in a more effective way.
Perhaps, Professor Sangra, we can't hear you because your microphone is off.
Excuse me. I do that for security and for not giving you more noise. Yes, so there are no more questions. So let's go to the following participants. Is that fine?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. The next one is the work entitled "Problematic Use of Social Networking Sites Among Adolescents in the Czech Republic versus Offline Risk Behavior and Parental Control." This is being presented by Lukas Tomczyk from the Jagiellonian University from Poland, René Zotkowski from the University in Olomouc in the Czech Republic, Lazar Stosic from Don State Technical University in Russia, and Jelena Maksimovic from the University of Nice in Serbia. The papers show results about the problematic use of social networking sites, and the authors collected data from a group of adolescents in Czech Republic, 531 participants between 13 and 19 years old, and they tried to reply 4 research questions that are: 1, the level of problematic use of social networking sites among adolescents in the Czech Republic; the second, the co-occurrence of indicators of problematic social network use; the third, the level of problematic social network use versus socio-demographic variables; and lastly, the predicting the level of problematic social network use versus offline risk behaviors and parental control. Professor Tomczyk, dzień dobry.
Dzień dobry. Dzień dobry. Good morning, everyone. Do you hear me well?
Yes. We hear
start?
you very well.
Okay. Thank you once again. We are really proud that you accept our submission, and we want to tell you something about the small piece of big term like internet addiction or problematic internet use. We focus on data from before the pandemic time. Our team is really huge, and I will explain why briefly. My main affiliation is a Polish affiliation, but now I'm working at the Italian University di Macerata, where I'm conducting a big research about teachers of the future in the information society with Professor Laura Fedeli. But I'm not only doing a research about how to improve future teaching staff, but according to the digital literacy, but we are also doing a lot of research about the positive and negative side of ICT, not only among teachers, but also among the pupils. And we try to get data from many countries, not only from the Central Eastern Europe, but also from countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, among others, from Serbia, from Russia. This is the reason why we cooperate and why we try to using, for example, one tool and repeat the research in another countries. This is the reason why we have such a big team from Czech Republic, Serbia, Russia. And yeah, I'm the member of the Polish group of UKids Online. Probably you know this big research network where we are locating it in the two paradigms of media education. One is the paradigm of opportunities that we try to analyze and create some longitudinal studies how the ICT improve life of children and youths. And second part of this big research is a paradigm of risk behavior. And today I will tell you something. I will try to tell you something about this dark side of internet. Yeah, and you know probably this typology of cyber threats from UKids or Pew Research or your local research networks. Now we have a lot of data about the scale of cyberbullying, about the digital piracy, what sexting is, about the data protection, and many others. But okay, when you try to analyze, for example, cyberbullying, it's so easy because the questionnaire is simple and we're asking about some forms of how to one pupils bully another pupils on social network site or by happy slapping with using the smartphones and more and more. And it's so easy. But when we're thinking about, for example, internet addiction, it's not so easy because addiction is a medical word. And we know that in DSM scale or another medical scale, we don't have this kind of sick like internet addiction. And our research group tried to analyze some small pieces of every kind of this kind of addiction. And in more correct, we should say problematic internet use, because addiction, we know that is a sick and problematic internet use. It's not so medical term, it's soft term. It's not generate the stereotype about the style of using new media. And since few years ago, we get some milestone how to create the tools, how to interpret this phenomenon, and how the basic environment, family, is one of the protective factors when we're thinking about the problematic internet use. And we have more and more knowledge about this. This is screenshots from the article published, for example, in US about some small pieces.
Lucas, excuse me. We are looking at the presentation in the first page, but we are not looking at the different slides. Now we are in the FOMO 2018 one. Yes, but could you maximize the slides?
Yeah, when I try to maximize, something happened, and we back, and
Right.
probably you.
Okay. Then stay that way, and now we are in the right slide. Okay. Go on, please, and excuse me.
Thank you for this important information, and sorry for this small technical problem. Okay, I'll try to maybe I'll maximize just a little bit.
Fine, perfect.
And okay, and we collect some data from in 2015 about the family, how family really protect youth. And we get some data that, okay, when we're thinking about the small pupils, family is a key factors to decrease the level of problematic internet use, or let's say internet addiction. We also create another tools and using another tools about the FOMO, and we repeat some research, for example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina about, let's say, similar problem, focus on internet and addiction. And we find in 2018, before pandemic time, that around 30% of adolescents in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they are at the risk of FOMO. And around 20% of our population in this country has a full symptoms of FOMO. And we also, of course, created some calculation about the co-occurrence, this phenomenon with social demographic variables, but this is only introduction, and I want to go to the main research from Czech Republic. But this background is important because we try to measure this phenomenon, problematic internet use, for many years, and we try to analyze how the scale of problematic internet use are changing. And we also try to remove some stereotypes about the style of using new technology by the youth, because we know that in a popular conversation in the regular newspaper, or when parents talking about, or teachers, everyone say that every youth have a high factors of problematic internet use, but we know that it's not true. When we're using some diagnostic scales, and we want to remove the stereotype. Okay, I want to also show you some print screen from another research. We also find some correlation between when you're at risk in an offline sphere, you'll be also risking in online sphere. That we should not divide online and offline sphere. It's a really important issue when we are conducting a big research, more complex research about the problematic internet use. In the last year, we conduct fresh data also from the Bosnia and Herzegovina about what happened after pandemic time. We use after because we know that we are still in the pandemic period. But in the Bosnia, the new data are coming really soon, and also will be published in some prestigious place. We combine FOMO, nomophobia, phubbing, and addiction to social networks, and try to show subscale of problematic internet use, because we know that problematic internet use, it's also fear of missing out, that someone looking steal information without any real needs, for example. We also know that problematic internet use, it is something like this, that you still want to keep in your hand your smartphone and looking something in your smartphone without any needs, or and we combine this subscale of problematic internet use and collect the really interesting data in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And we know that society is changing, and it's for example, when I ask someone 5, 6, 7 years ago, if you are online 4 hours every day, is a high or low number. Everyone say, for example, a decade ago, that this is a higher number. But now today, 3, 4, 5 hours be online, it's something normal also for the youth due to the pandemic, for example, time. And this is interesting how the screen time, how the waiting time for some message on social networks are changing in this period. And of course, in this research, I will show you just briefly one kind of problematic internet use. It's the problematic use of social network sites. And we know that there's a center of communication, center of entertainment, center of social life for many youths. And we create the 4 basic research questions in the tool addressed to the Czech youths. You see here this 4 basic questions. What is the level of problematic use of social network sites among the youth in Czech Republic? How the indicators working together, indicators from the diagnostic tool, and also if this phenomenon is differentiated by the social demographic variables. And also we create some simple prediction model. If exists some relation between problematic social network use and online risk behavior, offline risk behaviors, and restrictive new media parenting style. And we use for this aim triangulation of the tool. First one was social network use frequency scale, created by the heads Dawson and Cullen. Simple 5-question with 5-point Likert scale. And we also use our own scale about the parental control of online activities. We also use the Polish scale of psychoactive substance use, because we want to show you how this offline and online risk are in relation. Methodology, we collect the data with colleagues from Czech Republic, from the Palacký University in Olomouc, and also by people from my previous place of work, from the biggest Polish state pedagogical university in Krakow. We have a good cooperation with colleagues from Czech Republic, because we are doing cross-border projects. Because I'm a lucky man, because I live close to the border with Czech Republic and Slovakia, but I'm working in Krakow. And I'm using also Czech language, and it's easy for me to collect the data in the Czech Republic with some contact, with some relation with people from the Center for the Prevention of Risky Virtual Communication, Palacký University. Sample, 5,000 respondents, more or less half and half girls and boys. The mean was around 16, pupils between 13 and 19, and probably everyone knows where Czech Republic is. We're asking about them how often they use social media during the typical activities, like and here you will see, for example, how often do you use social media 15 minutes before going to sleep? And the majority of respondents say, yeah, we are doing that kind of issue almost every day, over 50%. And yeah, this is a typical one. The pupils before pandemic time go sleep. First of all, they're checking what happened on social network sites. What are they doing when they wake up? They also over 50%, over half of respondents, really often, first of all, checking what happened on social network sites, where they are, for example, eating something. Also, over 30% eating something, for example, lunch, breakfast, or dinner, and scrolling what happened on social network sites. But this is data from the, I will repeat once again, data from the pre-pandemic time. And now everything changing. The data, we have a fresh data from another countries, and we know that the time spent online, also on scrolling new media, are going up. And we use the simple cluster analysis by the k-means, and we find that over 28% of our respondents, they are in the group of risk. Every symptoms are leading in a high way. And also interesting is a cluster, for example, number 3, that we have similar group that they are not in the risk, that we remove also some stereotypes that every adolescent using in the incorrect way social network sites. This is not true. Of course, if you have one symptoms about the problematic internet use, probably you will also have another symptoms lagging also in a high level, but the correlation is in the medium and strong level. Not every factors co-occurrence in the strong have a strong relation. It means that it's homogenic situation when we're thinking about the problematic internet use of problematic use of social network sites. But it's not true that when you some children, some pupils, for example, eating something and watching social network sites, they will be also doing that same in another situation. The correlation is strong, but it's only a simple correlation. But we have a data from another research, and we know that not all ad threats are in a strong relation. For example, sexting and problematic social network use have a not strong correlation. That it's also another stereotype that you have a high level of one at threats, you will be also dangerous because something happened in another field of cyberspace. It's also not true. Gender. Girls have just a little bit higher symptoms of problematic social network use, but we also find the same statistical important results in another research from other countries. What is interesting when we try to predict the level of problematic social network use, and we put to this model offline risk behaviors and parental control, we find that some issue predict some factors of problematic internet use. For example, alcohol consumption, getting drunk. This is factors not so strong, but exist, that they increase factors of problematic social network use. But parents' control in some cases decrease the level of problematic social network use. It's work more strongly when we're thinking about, of course, smaller pupils, about the young adolescents, not about the older adolescents. Yeah, but we know that everything is changing, and society also is in the process of the change, and something. For example, some situation when you scroll a really intensive social network sites, or you listen to music or online, and among others, for the young generation is normal. It's like habits, like a second nature. But for the older generation, it will be classified like a threats. And we also should keep in mind when we're doing this kind of research to not copy it, to not spread the stereotypes about the youths. And we know that style of using of ICT is a pedagogical challenge for everyone, mostly for the teachers who working with the pupils in school. We have a big debate, for example, in France, if we should ban the smartphones or not. But in the pandemic time, a lot of pupils using smartphones as a primary tool to connect and listen to teachers and doing something. And situation has been reversed, and really curious. We control the social. We should, when we are not only doing diagnosis, for example, in Poland or in Czech Republic, we also try to create some preventive programs and test these preventive programs among the pupils at the schools. And we know that if we support the key competences, for example, when we're developing self-control, it's a universal protective factor. When you have a good self-control, you will be more safe, you will be more protect when we're thinking about some threats. And also one of our projects financed by the Polish Ministry of Education was focused on the parents. And now we know that this is a big ecosystem. When we want to decrease some threats like problematic internet use, sexting, cyberbullying, digital piracy, among others, we should also working with the parents. Not only explain, not only give the information, but also analyze some cases. And that's it. And thank you for your attention. And thank you one more time. I'm so happy that This is my first time in Foggia, virtually, of course, but first time. Now I'm living in Sirolo in Italy. It's a central region of Italy, and probably when the pandemic period will come down, we'll have occasion to visit each other and speak, for example, and speak and try to find a common background about how to support the teachers, how to support the parents, how to conducting comparative studies about these issues. Once again, thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Tomsik. I think that your intervention has been very interesting, and especially providing this vision from different countries also that are all them involved in the problematic that you have showed today. So I don't know if there are any questions, Raffaele.
No, at the moment there are no questions, but I have a comment and curiosity. Dziękuję bardzo to Łukasz. I want to ask if you plan to study the correlation between ages and the impact. You selected adolescents in a range of age. If you have other studies that you did or in the field that analyze this aspect, if more mature adolescents have a different impact or not? Do you plan this or which is you in a certain way you propose your next step? So which is your next aim for to follow up this study? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for this question. It's I think it's an important question because the age is a predictive also factor. Younger adolescents using new media more strictly. Parents control the spend time. They are not fully on the social network sites than older adolescents. This is true that metrical age is one of the predictive factor. And I will tell you something important. Now we are collecting the data about not only about the self-evaluation, because self-evaluation we know that has a lot of methodological shortcomings, let's say. Now we try to combine data from the smartphones according to the screen time, because screen time is a strong diagnostic factor. Screen time is how many hours you spend really to using and what social network sites, Teams, or whatever. And also it's important not only screen time, because we want to also include another variables, soft variables, not only time, but what are you doing? If you are doing in a constructive way, or you are only serve or watching without any motivation. And the next step is to triangulate some perspective, triangulate more sharp data, more sharp. We are scientists. We should be. We should remove some shortcomings from the self-evaluation, and this is a challenge. How to create also some borders between problematic and unproblematic style of using the new technology. This is a real challenge. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you very much. Then I think that we can go and skip to the following presentation. It's going to be the one that is entitled "The Motivation of Distance Learning in Universities Since COVID-19 Outbreak." It's going to be presented by Pier Paolo Limone and Giusy Antonia Totò. The article, both of them from the University of Foggia, and the article is a comprehensive and recent review of university students' motivation with online learning since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the paper, qualitative and quantitative variables are used to quantify student motivation. So a very interesting topic too. So, Giusy Antonia, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. At this point, we should say a word of thanks to Professor Sangra, who is in charge of these conferences. So, my paper, my contribution. Okay, I am Giusy Antonia Toto, a researcher at the University of Foggia, and this research is written with Limone professor. The theme is the motivation of distance learning in university since COVID-19. A majority of the complex learning universities are offering virtual programs for their scholars, both around and off campuses, making education accessible to everyone despite your location, provided you have a laptop or mobile device with internet connectivity. Technology has changed traditional education to the current form of accessible education, an example being artificial intelligence. Shazam and colleague defined e-learning as technology-based education retrieved through websites, learning there's old, video conferences, YouTube, mobile application, and other various platforms through the available websites of merged education tools. Okay. Shazam and colleague explain that university closed down due to COVID-19 epidemic, and most lecturers and students were happy to shift to online education. However, the sudden change from face-to-face learning to virtual education was faced with various challenges that enraged the smooth and fluent submission of learning research among learning institutions. Okay. The online milieu comprised of two parts of interlining styles, the scholar, trainer, and content, and the second comprised of how the approach of interlink is expressed. However, the sudden change for face-to-face learning to virtual education was faced with various challenges with this institution. In the current time, virtual learning constructs a more notable impression on all kinds of students, as much as the freelance and permanent in the higher education institution, and it's becoming very helpful for the students, since a majority of them are working in companies easing their schedules due to time to constraint. COVID-19 theatrically restructured the way worldwide education is covered. So, okay. With the pandemic, all university facilities have been faced with various psychological, physical, and economic challenges, resulting in disorders in the running of these facilities. Another author called Brawling at Colleague explained that university students are increasingly renowned as an exposed populace. With the drastic change in the nature of their educational familiarity, change such as sheltering in the place throughout the corona plagues created a more significant encumbrance on the students' mental health. We knew that university students rarely had a psychiatric and counseling service, which is critical and essential to warrant immediate health intervention, that would help curb the issue among students. However, according to generally scientific conferences, students seemed not to have been affected totally academically by the COVID-19 pandemic, as elsewhere in the world. Okay. The educational problem that the world is facing issue with as a byproduct of the virus have become highly burdensome. In spite of effort at gradual normalization in learning, it seems the any semblance of normal will take some time to get to be a reality. Learners, instructors, school administrators, and parents all got tangled up in an educational process in which the fundamental of face-to-face education have to get converted to digital environments in a short period of time. Okay. So this research, in order to facilitate all students so as to carry on with their studies and achieve personal career goals, there was a need to implement online classes for students in all learning institutions. The methodology, research method on these studies, on this research, is based on systematic review used in the analysis adopted the recommendation of Dingra and colleagues. A systematic review was conducted using PubMed, Science Direct, Google Scholar, and other database, reviewing a database of studies on e-learning in university during the COVID-19 pandemic. All journals included in this review, and the study was selected for this research are 115. I have a problem with, okay. From the data collected and analyzed, the outcomes suppose that there was a noteworthy relationship between the gratification with online learning and variables of sex and the previous experiences of enjoying online classes prior to COVID-19. According to Yekefal and other authors, they explained that with an increase in age, the level of gratification was similarly increasing, and there was an affiliation between male and female scholars based on gender in the aspect of e-learning. This author explained that student satisfaction with the evaluation technique portrayed that self-assessment give students the chance to assess and do a recap of what they have learned and their perceived and metacognitive approaches. Also, students grasped their strong point and weaknesses. There was a deep and optimistic connection between lectures oral and non-verbal behavior and the prospect of using automated content to complete training. From this research, it is quite important to mention the effort have to be made to expand the value of virtual learning and the factor distressing it's due to the pervasiveness of COVID-19. Distance learning may be held for the longest period ever since no one has any idea when the pandemic will come to a halt. Another researcher, such as Abbasi and colleague, argued that inactiveness to this treat case can lessen the eminence of edification and scholars' level of acquisition, which will consequently due to the unwelcome gratification with online learning as generally reduced. So, some studies on motivation underline how the lack of self-discipline rewarding the personal drive to learning influences readiness level owing to environmental disruption such as working obligation and the massive home environment is a crucial challenge to online distance learning. The student who lack willpower and experiences lower stimulus can fall into the abrasion group of students that affect their school performance in the distance learning. In motivation context, on students' virtual learning attitudes, reports higher computer interesting level correlate with higher online learning attitudes. Also, the enthusiasm to explore computer tools and have the capability to use internet application could reduce the sign of technology stress among scholars, mainly in the venturing into online distance learning avenue. Having a self-drive toward distance learning enhances the world of studying responsibility to become an independent learning, captivating as compared to traditional face-to-face learning and embedded sense of personal autonomy. Motivation is the key for anyone determined to see the other end of the tunnel to excel in this form of learning since various milestones in the journal face it. For the success of learning, lecturers need to understand students' motivation, while on the other side, students themselves need to adapt and shift from face-to-face learning in the online classes. The lecturers have an obligation to keep in mind that motivation must get nurtured in students. This is by elaborating to students how the online environment may be exploited and embodied interaction and teamwork among students themselves to strengthen learning motivation. In conclusion, online is the future of where the world is heading to. As we have to move with the new trend that is approaching us. The transition towards e-learning has been a difficult task for not only for students, but also to facilitators across the world, and it is manifesting itself in various avenues. E-learning has proven to be the newest learning process that we have to go with since medical practitioners have not clarified when the COVID-19 will come to an end, and learning has to contain. Hence, various learning institutions should invest in their digital platform in collaboration with the head of state and provide convenient interest access internet to their students to facilitate proper university learning. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Giulia Antonia. My apologies for your last name. I said Toto because I had an accent. It's Toto, so I'm sorry for that mistake. And thank you very much. Grazie mille. Raffaele, I don't know if we have questions for Gius Antonia.
At the moment in the YouTube, there are no questions, but I have a quick question to Giusy regarding the motivation. Which are the elements that impacted on motivation after 2 years of the online use?
So, according to some authors, we try some areas, public, such as parties, religious services, social amenities, political gathering, or physical learning for both university and lower levels stopped since health come first before anything else. With that in hand, the world had to look for a suitable solution to cope with the pandemics, since the COVID was not ending time soon. As a result, the globe adapted the new normal of life. In response, education facilities had to embark on e-learning since life had to contain, which is great gratitude to technology. However, it brought about various issues that we will try highlight, since a change in anything is always accompanied by multiple challenges. That's it.
Thank you for your answer.
Thank you very much. I also have a quick question, in the sense that when you are talking about motivation, I always think that we use motivation in a very general way. In the case of your study, what does motivation mean? What I mean is that is motivation for what? So how you have approached the concept of motivation in your study?
So students have varied perceptions concerning learning, some being positive while others negative, which widely contradict them, although they still have to attend class and submit assignments. However, mobile is one of the most common devices among students for e-learning compared to laptops and tablets, since it is cheaper and more easily portable than having a computer with you. So, some authors explain that a study carried out on university students provide that all of students use mobile devices for e-learning, which sound similar to that of large percentage preferring having a mobile device compared to having laptop for students. This implies that online learning in universities could increase double if students gained an access to a reality and convenient internet access. Since almost all have a smartphone that supports access and the various websites and other learning platforms in internet world. So education is the backbone of a notion. Regardless of what happens, education has to continue as it was as much as possible.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now it's clear. So I think we are reaching the end of this session. We're in perfect time, I think. And at the same time, I would like not to finish by saying that I think that the different presentations, the 4 presentations, have shown us how important is this concept of these new intersections between psychology, learning, and technology. We have seen presentations related to the grief in relatives of patients that have died because of COVID-19 and how to manage that technologically. Also, how storytelling is moving to be more and more digital and how this is going to be studied. And we also see the problematic use of social networking sites among adolescents. And finally, the most important thing in distance and online learning, that is motivation from the students, especially for the universities. So all these, I think, that show us that more interdisciplinary research is needed. And then I encourage all you, especially those that have started your research, those that have show your reviews and so on, to keep going in this way, in order to keep going researching on these different disciplines that can find a crossroad in which we can meet all together. So I think that the rest of the conference will be as interesting as this session. And I would like to thank very much to the organization, and particularly your rector, Paolo Limone, for the invitation, Raffaele Di Fulcio for your support in doing this. And I hope that everything will come to an end with happiness for everyone. So hopefully we could meet in some weeks physically, hopefully. And I would like to thank to all the presenters for the work, for the presentations, and all the attendees for being present in this session. So thank you very much. Raffaele, the floor is yours to go on.
Thank you, Professor Sangraf, for this closing remarks of this session that was very interesting in my opinion. I want to thank all the participant attendees. We had more than 100 attendees on YouTube. We hope that in the next period, in the next conference, we will have this 100 in real and a part online in a blended approach that you said, in a real blended approach, in the real fluid blended approach. We hope this. I want to thank you all, and the next session will be tomorrow, 2:30, and we will have papers about the school impact and the overlapping between psychology and technology in school. And then we will have the final day, Friday. However, you will be able to see the conference through the YouTube channel. And I think we can close the session in perfect time. Thank you for Sangraf to take the perfect timing for this. And we will see tomorrow. Thank you to all. Bye-bye.
Arrivederci.